Okay. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here and you don't know my face, my name is Stephanie Jean and this is my channel where I like to talk about stuff on the internet. For this episode, we are discussing some reading materials for educating yourself on why Black Lives Matter. These aren't necessarily connected to the movement itself, but these are some books or plays that I've read that I would recommend to somebody. It's not like I found a reading list that Black Lives Matter as a movement put out, but these are some books that I would recommend to anyone who's interested in becoming an anti-racist, which should be everyone, I would hope. So the first book I would recommend is called Celia A Slave by Milton A. McLaurin, a true story of violence and retribution in antebellum Missouri. I'm putting it on here because we have to talk about slavery when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, because that's where systemic racism started. That's where I wanted to start this reading list. It does say that the typical time to read is 3 hours and 10 minutes, and it's only 195 pages long. But it takes place in pre-Civil War America in the antebellum South, and it discusses the story of Celia, who was 14 when she was acquired by John Newsom. The next book I would recommend is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I read this in high school, and I think at one point I want to do a full book talk about this book. But it's kind of sci-fi-ish, where the main character is a modern-day Black woman who's about 26. Yeah, she's celebrating her 26th birthday, and she ends up getting yeeted back in time to a plantation. And she keeps going back and forth between the two time periods without any control over when or where she ends up. It's just a really interesting read, and even though this is fiction, I wanted to have a novel on this list. I read it I think my freshman year of high school, so it's not too difficult of a read. I will recommend this book over and over and over again because it's absolutely fantastic. Someone Has Led This Child to Believe by Regina Louise, and this is an autobiography of a Black woman who grew up in the American foster system. It's basically her story growing up, what it was like being in foster care, and what it was like being a Black girl in America's foster care. And then the next nonfiction that I will recommend is called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo Lodge. Even though this author is not American, she's European, she talks about European racism, which is important for Americans to understand as we're tackling our own systematic racism. We have to recognize that it is a global issue. This isn't centralized in one city, in one state. It's not just one country or one nation's problem. It's a global problem. It's been happening for way too long in way too many places, so I wanted to include a little bit of global view of a Black woman who is not in America talking about non-American racism. A lot of people get riled up by just the title, and in the beginning of the book she talks about that. So she actually had written an article before the book called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, and she explains that she was met with a lot of comments from white people saying, no, please don't stop, please talk to us. But it's important for us white allies to recognize it is not the job of Black people to educate us. It's our job to educate ourselves, because they're tired already of living this nightmare all the time. And on top of that, to expect them to just constantly have to relive their trauma, relive their reality by trying to get you to understand it's cruel. So educate yourself. And then my final recommendation is actually a very large recommendation. It's a collection of plays. It's a 10-piece saga or series. It's called The Pittsburgh Cycle, and it's written by playwright August Wilson, an African-American playwright. He wrote these plays, and each one takes place in a different decade, and it talks about the Black experience in America. It covers the entire 20th century. So you really get to see this progression of where it came from and where it is, from living as a Black person in the early 20th century in America to the late 20th century in America. You can see how some things change, how some things stay the same, how some values are still there, how the system changes. I hope you guys check out these books, and if you do, let me know on Twitter or Instagram at p_underscore. Let me know on Twitter or Instagram at p_StephanieJean, and I will see you in another JuneTube video tomorrow. Love you, bye!